if you're auditioning and not booking, and you feel like you're really in the zone, but then afterwards, you're like, oh, I forgot to do that thing, or you start second guessing yourself. You feel like there's a whole other layer to your audition that you meant to get to, but you didn't, or whatever. Usually, when it's not a mindset thing, sometimes it could be a mindset thing. That's a whole other conversation. But on the technique side, usually what that means is you're prepping in a non-systematic sort of way. Meaning, when you're doing your prep, and this is what I've observed most of the time when I've seen this result, is that you get the sides and you just dive in head first and you start making choices and doing all these things. And what happens when you do that, sometimes you do get in the zone and you come up with these great moments, but then you get in the audition and you're like, oh, I didn't do this, or I didn't do that, or the audition felt choppy, or you felt like you hit some things and didn't hit other things. It's because when you prepped, if you didn't prep in a systematic way and you just followed your gut, then you probably forgot things and you missed out on things that you should have done in your prep. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't follow your gut. You should always follow your gut. Your gut is so important. Being in the flow, being in touch with that energy, being in the zone, whatever you want to call it. That's all really important. However, there's a place for that within your prep. Okay, so right now I'm talking about your audition prep versus when you get into your audition. So we'll put that over here for the minute. When you're prepping, there's, I highly recommend that you follow a very structured framework when you prep. Because, and I have one that we use in my Audition Rockstar Academy that works really well. But if you found something else, that's great. But it should be a very specific framework, because if you follow certain steps and stages every single time you prep, and you do it the same way within those stages and within that framework, there's room, right, for you to be in the flow, to be connected, to be doing all those things. But for example, that you created a rock solid goal. You found all the hidden transitions and the hidden audition traps because you systematically looked for those things in your beginning. And then that you filled in every possible specific that you could possibly have filled in, not just the obvious ones. And that you dealt with all of the, the tricky physical parts of your audition. There's all these things that your audition can be when you follow a systematic framework. And it's almost like a little checklist, of things that you're looking for when you learn how to use a framework like this, is that, you'll never forget if you followed this, if you follow stages and steps within your prep. Because then when you get it, and then you rehearse after as you do all that, you rehearse, but you're not rehearsing in accidental audition traps. You're not rehearsing in obvious choices. And you're creating an audition that has depth and scale, and you're rehearsing that, so that when you get into that high pressure situation, like a live or a virtual audition, you have that framework holding you, so that you can you can be in the flow then, and you don't have to think about the framework. You already used it. It's already there. It helped you create your audition. So you can go in the audition and you can do what you do to get in the zone and run with it, knowing that you've already hit all those things, and it will be with you, all those choices, and much more consistently than if you just go with the flow in your audition prep. So I just want to be really clear. I'm not saying you shouldn't go with the flow or you shouldn't get into the zone. You should absolutely do those things. However, when you're prepping, if you are systematic in your prep, there's plenty of room for flow and creativity, but then you don't forget things, you don't miss things, and when you forget things and miss things and don't know, all the different traps to look for, don't find all the deeper level hidden transitions and stuff like that, then you're creating an audition that's good, but not standout. Okay. And you, not only that, but you're giving yourself a reason to trip up because there's no systematic thing in place for you to rest on when you get into a high pressure situation. When you get into a high pressure situation, like an audition, the nerves, come up, the adrenaline kicks in, and that's when you're likely to miss something. But if you've prepped in this way, it holds you. It holds you and gives you this layer of confidence. So that's what I would recommend if you find that, you tend to look back and realize you missed something, you felt like you were in the flow, but it didn't stand out in some way. Think to yourself, how can I, what kind of framework can I use to prep for my auditions? If you want more help with that, certainly ask away because I have a framework for that as well. So, okay.